Okay, so as you do your approach, the beginning part is straight, it's like the letter J. The ending part is curved into your takeoff. And if you come from the right side, you're going to take off from your left leg. If you come from the left side, you're going to take off your right leg. And as you come in, that rotation of the curve is going to set up the motions that you're going to have over the bar and help you. So you don't want to cut your curve off by running more of an L or a saggy L, I guess. You want to keep this part rounded because that's what's going to help you get around the bar. When I take off, I like to turn my visual attention to the opposite standard. One, because it helps me to get my head up so that I'm not leaning forward, and gives me a frame of reference so that I'm aware of my body in space. Sometimes people close their eyes when they get right up to the takeoff, or they throw their head back immediately too early while they're still on the ground. And you want to kind of be aware of what's going on so that you can make small adjustments really quickly when you're over the bar. As I take off, I like to imagine that there's a big vacuum cleaner tube and I'm going to be spiraling sucked up into the vacuum tube. And that kind of helps me turn quickly, because you don't want to spend too much time here moving into the pit. You want to quickly rotate to get your back to the bar early as you're coming off the ground. And that's really initiated by the drive knee. So as I push here off my last step, this drive knee comes up and across to the opposite shoulder. I go up the vacuum tube, and then I'm able to rise, and I can kind of see out of the corner of my eye the standard and the bar, and I know exactly when it is that I should start opening and getting into extension of my upper body, which is going to allow me to have more clearance and escape touching the bar. Okay, so a note about efficiency when you're running. You want to make sure that your ground contacts are right underneath your hips. You don't want to start blocking, planting your foot too far out in front of you, because that's going to slow you down. As you contact, you want to bring them back underneath you so that you keep your momentum moving forward. It's really an efficiency thing that's going to allow you to exert more force on the ground. And a note about your foot position, you also want to be relatively dorsiflexed. And you know, although you're coming in, some people really advocate a lot of heel landings through the end, so a heel landing on the next to last step, which is called the penultimate. And definitely the takeoff is always a heel landing as you roll into the takeoff step. But you want to keep dorsiflexion. You don't want to come in real pointy like that and land on the toes, but you want to make sure you get a solid contact of at least the forefoot, the midfoot, wherever you're going to strike. I think if you land too much on your heels too early, it does become a braking action, because that's not a natural thing to have it land underneath you and have your heel land. But if you can bring it underneath you and keep dorsal flex as you contact, that's just going to give you a lot more force applied to the ground and be ideal. Okay, so the number one most important tip that I have for high jumping is to keep a gradual acceleration pattern. So in your steps, you start off slowly and then you increase the tempo each step until the last few steps are really fast as you can get them. And it's better to start off more slowly and have those last steps quickly, because if you run fast and you slow down over the last two steps, it kills it. It's horrible. You might as well come in like molasses and just quicken the last two. You'll have a better result, because that acceleration is kind of what sets up all the rotations and the body positions, and that braking action is what creates that forward somersault. So you want to have almost like a backward somersault. I always kind of think of it in my brain as if you had a wall in front of you, and I've never done this, but you see people run up to a wall and they run up and do a backflip. Well, they don't slow down when they get to the wall. They start slow and they kind of speed up, and that's what kind of gets their rotation going. And you know, if you run and you stop your feet, you do a front flip. So you don't want that. You want more of a back flip. And so that's my number one tip for the high jump, is gradual increasing acceleration pattern. So another really important tip is to keep the right torso angle when you're doing your high jump approach. When you start off, you have to get some momentum, so it's okay if you're leaning forward and your shoulders are in front of your hips. But as you get your speed and you hit about the midpoint of your approach, you want to have your hips underneath your shoulders. You don't want to be leaning forward still. And then as you further transition into the curve, you're going to be even more upright, maybe with your shoulders even a little bit back. And when you get to the takeoff, you definitely don't want to be leaning forward, because when you hit, you're just going to fall straight into the bar. And when you have your shoulders back a little bit, it creates a little bit of a hinge moment where when you go to the upright position and leave the ground, you go from this spot to this spot, and you don't go past vertical going into the bar. So that's creating the transition from the beginning of the run, the middle, and then the end torso angle. So as far as the flight, I mentioned that this right knee comes up and across and holds, and you don't want that dropping down too early. You want to hold it up till you really reach the apex and you feel like you're not climbing anymore. And then after that point, you're going to convert this flexion here in your hip flexor into a contraction of the glutes, and they call it frog legs in high jumping, because you have your legs splayed and you bring your heels up towards your butt, and you're going to really, I like to say it's like someone threw hot water on your back, and your reaction would be something like that. Your whole body goes into a really rigid extension, and that's what's going to allow you to maximize your bar clearance of your parabola. And then as you bring your heels up underneath you, what's going to trigger getting out of that arch is bringing your head to your chest. And that's actually going to make your feet kick. So it's kind of an automatic thing. When you see you're kind of at the point of this, that's about when your brain says, violently bring your head to your chest. It does two things. It makes your legs kick, and you also have to do that, because if you landed on the pit in full extension, you'd probably injure your neck.